friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Megan and today we are discussing all the books I read in April. I had a really good reading month, both quantity and quality, and I was able to complete a ton of things for the Orilium Magical Readathon. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Okay, so first we will go through all of the classes I needed to read for my calling of choice. And my calling was a Master of Elements, very similar to Avatar: The Last Airbender because I love that show and I feel like I would be a really good Master of Elements. But I also did a few extra classes just for being interested in them and potentially doing a second calling of some sort. So just to kick us off, I started with Animal Studies, which was to do a quick read. And for that, I picked Star Wars: The High Republic graphic novel. This is volume 2, The Heart of Drangir. In this, we are following Avar Kriss and her battle against the Drangir, as well as Keeve and Skier and the Padawan Master struggling with the dark side kind of elements. So this was a really interesting read and I really enjoy these graphic novels, so definitely a quick read because, you know, comic. And yeah, so that was my very first class. Second up for Master of Elements, I had to study astronomy or read a book at the top of my TBR. In March, I read the Shadowfall series, which starts with Born at Midnight, and I did not think I was gonna like it, but it ended up being a guilty pleasure for me. So the sequel was definitely at the top of my TBR, and that was Awake at Dawn. This is a series by CC Hunter, and it just gives me nostalgic, like, Wattpad vibes. So it was like perfect for my cozy, comfort, nostalgic read. So that is what I went with for that. And I ended up enjoying this one as well. So yay! Next up for Master of Elements, I had to study Conjuration, which is to read a book with a source of light on the cover. That could be a flashlight, the moon, the sun, anything like that. I ended up going with Daughter of the Moon Goddess. This fit the prompt, plus it was also a book club pick for 2 book clubs I'm in. So it ended up working out perfectly with my TBR. And you guys, this was definitely my favorite book of the month. I adored this one so much. We're following Xingyin, who is the daughter of the Moon Goddess. And the Moon Goddess has actually been imprisoned on the moon for past wrongdoing. And she's not actually allowed to have her daughter on the moon with her. So when the Celestial Kingdom comes calling, Xingyin kind of escapes and lives out her life in the Celestial Kingdom. There's like a trial to become the prince's companion. There's enemies to lovers. There's just so much going on. There is a love triangle, but I ended up really loving how it played out, and I'm so excited to see what the sequel is going to be. I will say that this book, I didn't realize there was actually a sequel. Like, of course, I always want more, especially of books that I enjoy. But this one ended so well. Like, I didn't feel like it really ended on a cliffhanger. It ended so, like, neatly. I guess I didn't realize there was a sequel until someone told me. So I'm even more excited now to have more of this world coming later this year. Next for Master of Elements is obviously Elemental Studies. For this, we are studying air, so you were to read a book with less than 100 pages. I ended up going with a short story from a trilogy I've been reading, which is the Furyborn trilogy by Claire Legrand, and I picked up Queen of the Blazing Throne, in which we are following the young queen of one of the other kingdoms, or queendoms in her case, and her kind of point of view on how something specific in Lightbringer happened in like her perspective. So I don't want to talk about it too much because I could give away spoilers for the second book, but I ended up really enjoying this one and I thought it was an interesting perspective. So it just makes me excited to pick up the final book, which is Lightbringer. So yay! My next class to study was Restoration, and we are studying healing prompts for this. So we need to read a book featuring healers. I ended up going with the sequel to Raybearer, which is Redemptor by Jordan Rafuico. This is a really interesting storyline in which our main character, I'll speak on Raybearer actually. So our main character, she has been born as a genie of sorts, and it is her mother's final wish to have her kill the prince. However, in order to kill the prince, you have to be part of his ray, and in order to be part of the ray, you have to love him. So she's really battling with this like duty to her natural instinct versus her duty to her heart, and it's a really interesting story and battle and conflict, so I really enjoyed that one. And then this one was also really good. I loved the way it ended. I think it tied up so nicely. The final class I had to study was shapeshifting, and we were focusing on claw formation, so you needed to read a book with some sort of animal with claws or just a claw on the cover. I ended up going with the Raven Boys. As you can see, the raven here has claws, and it ended up working out that it was also the book I had at the time for the sisterhood exchange I have going on, in which my friends and I exchange our favorite books and like annotate. I had the Raven Boys, so it worked out really nicely, and I am going to be definitely continuing the series. It was a lot of fun, kind of like, I don't want to say Indiana Jones vibes, but the history study and the adventure seeking side of things, and I really enjoyed that. But my favorite part of this book was definitely the characters. I think the characters in this are some of my favorite characters that I've read because they're just all so sweet. I just really love them. So yeah. Then I did study 2 other classes that I was just kind of interested in. The first was the Art of Illusion, and for this I picked up these Rebel Waves because it was supposed to be a trope you like, and pirates are definitely a trope I like. These Rebel Waves were following 3 different perspectives. We have a daughter of the head of the raiders, and she's kind of like this spy, and then we have Devereaux Bell, who is a raider aka a pirate, and he's like the most notorious criminal. And then we also have Ben, who is the son of like the head of the church, who is aka the head of this kingdom. Ben's father is highly against magic, and Grace LeRae, which is where the raiders are from, are just wanting to live and exist and use their magic. So there's war going on between the two, and this took so many twists and turns I did not see coming. Usually I'm pretty good picking up on what's gonna happen, but I definitely did not see the final twist in this. So it was really good, and I enjoyed it. Probably 4.5 stars. And the final class I studied was lore, because mythology, who doesn't love it? For this we have to read a mythology inspired book, and for this I'm using The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. This is the 3rd book of the Poppy War trilogy, inspired by kind of Chinese history / mythology. And I'm not gonna go too deep into this because I've talked about it on my channel before. I've done the read along videos that you can go watch, but essentially this is the 3rd book. There's war, obviously, and shamans, and I was gonna give this probably 4 stars until the very end. It tied up so well, so perfectly for this series, that I'm back at 5 stars for it. So yeah. Then in my time in the Orilium semester, I did go on a few quests for the Magical Academy. So I'm gonna go through those really quickly as well. So the first one was Feather Plucker. For this, you had to read a book only when it was dark outside. I ended up reading The Vanishing Throne, which was my ebook at the time, so it ended up working out perfectly because I typically only read my ebook when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm just wide awake and have nothing to do but don't want to wake anyone else up. So I just scroll through my ebook, and yeah, that ended up working out. This is the sequel to The Falconer, 2nd book of the trilogy, and it was really good. Next is the Fireweasel Quest. For this, you were to read a book of an author that is new to you. I ended up going with this book, which is called 9 of Swords by Brooklyn Quintana. Brooklyn actually sent this to me last year, and I feel like such a terrible reviewer for just now getting to it. I actually read part of it last year and then just set it down and then completely forgot about it, and I don't even know why, because I was enjoying the story. So I'm gonna give this one 4 stars. It was a really fun time. I think my only qualm with the book was that the perspective changes were almost jarring, because half the time I didn't even realize there had been a perspective change. So it was just like, wait, how does this person know this? And then you realize, oh, this person's perspective now. So I think that was a little, could be worked on a little bit. And then the other thing was, I feel like the main character just survived death way too many times, too easily. But otherwise, this was a really fun book. We're following a young boy named Phineas Fogg, or Finn for short. He is the 5th in line for the throne, and he is headed off to Morinci, which is a military academy. So he's learning survival tactics and magic and sailing and basically anything you might need to be in the military. At the end of the year, he is going into the set of war games in which he has to survive in order to continue on at the academy. It's been a wild ride for sure, but I had a lot of fun reading it, so yeah. Next, it was the Spellbook Quest. Someone stole the spellbook, so I'm kind of like spying around trying to find who took it, because it's the libraries. So for this, you needed to read a library book. I went with Taken at Dusk, which is book 3 of 5 in the Shadowfall series, and again, just total nostalgia, total Wattpad vibes, and I really enjoy this guilty pleasure series. Next, I need to collect an Amlerite sample, and for this you had to read a book with a purple cover. I ended up going with the sequel to Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson, which is Devil in the Device. This was a little bit of a slower start for me. It took me a bit to get into it, but I think it was a really good story in the end. I really enjoyed the twists and turns we went on. Goddess in the Machine tells a story of a girl who wakes up 1,000 years after a cryo tank sleep in which she was supposed to awaken on a new planet, only to discover she's still on Earth and is being revered as a goddess. And there's like these nanobot attacks happening, and they look to her to save them all. So it's just this chaotic sci-fi series, and it's a lot of fun. I know. This is my animal studies. Who's my buddy? Party! Alright, so yeah, the next quest is Party, and for this you need to read a book with one point of view. I read Queenie by Candace Carty Williams, and this was a wild book. I think I did a disservice by reading it when I did, just because a lot of the things hit pretty hard and I was just like not feeling it, because it was making me really upset. It is a good book as it's written, but I was not too inclined to enjoy it, and a lot of my rating is based on enjoyment, unfortunately, so I'm probably not gonna keep this one. The next quest was Rare Ingredient, or to read a book with a D in the title. I ended up having the perfect book on my TBR already, and that was Dooku, Jedi Lost. This is the next book of the Star Wars adventure entire thing I'm going on. So this is an audiobook, and it's actually meant to be read as an audiobook. This book itself is actually the script of the audiobook. I don't know if you can see that. So it's not actually like a novel. So this was a really interesting read. I did read it in audio format. I learned things about Count Dooku that I never knew before, which was a really interesting look into his backstory, and I really enjoyed this one. Then we have combat training. Someone needed some training with a buddy to learn some combat skills, and for this you needed to read a book as a buddy read. I ended up going with just the book club book that we had for the Fae pick for the last books club, which was Rhapsodic, and this is the first book of the Bargainer series. I didn't think I was gonna like it at first, but it ended up being pretty entertaining in the end, and I'm definitely going to be continuing the series. It follows a siren who has like maintained this relationship with a person called the Bargainer throughout the years of her life. Essentially, his role in this world is that he will come to anyone who needs aid and will exchange like horrible favors in your like worst times of need. So she has actually like created this friendship with the Bargainer, and it's like them evolving their relationship. Yeah. And then the final book and final quest of the magical readathon Orilium whole readathon is Problem Solver, and I had to read a book featuring assassins. This might be a stretch, but I'm gonna count it because I have the Star Wars Adventures Volume 1 by Daniel Jose Older, and I'm going to count the like bad guys in this as assassins because literally their only goal is to like ransack and kill in exchange for like bounty. So I'm gonna count them as assassins. And then I mean, I guess you can kind of count like Jedi as assassins, but like good assassins, I don't know. I'm gonna stick with the bad guys, the Nihil. I did not realize this going in, but this is the backstory of Zine and Lula and Krex and all them. I actually find that I enjoy them a lot more in graphic novel form than in novelization form, so this ended up being a pretty entertaining read for me. And it's appropriate that this is the last book I'm talking about because it was also the last book I read. I was literally reading it last night, Saturday, April 30th at like 11:45, like almost falling asleep reading it. Not because it was bad, but because I was just so tired. But I finished it before midnight and got it just in, and it ended up being perfect. So yeah. So that was all the books I read in April. Let me know what you read in April or if you've read any of these books, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye, friends.